Okay. Heel. No. Nyla, if you can see, but the intensity in her eyes, but yet she's, got a little bit, she does have an evil side, but, she's a puppy yet, and she just needs the direction. Now I'm going to let her go and have some fun, because she hasn't been out of the truck that long. Okay. That's my command for letting them just go. They can have a little bit of playtime.
Jim, the very impressive of a young dog to be able to command off the leash like that. I notice you're not yelling the command louder and louder and louder whenever you weren't getting exactly what you wanted on the first try.
Yeah.
Talk about that for a sec. How do you help me as a less experienced dog trainer on my new dog?
How do you react when somebody yells at you? You just get more defiant, don't you? In general, most people get more defiant. And dogs, they're actually much more tolerant than people are. And, I always said, too, it's a lot easier to train the dog than it is to train the owner. The owners are the hard part. Training the dog's the easy part.
So just kind of go back to the start of that lesson and
yeah.
start again.
And everything's got to be done in order. Where you start with them sitting, you walk them on lead, then you get them walking off lead. And that it's no different than in the training process when you're teaching a kid math. You do addition, subtraction, multiplication. And when they hit long division, if they have a problem, how do you correct it? It's with the addition, the subtraction, and the multiplication. Or, you're building a house. You leave one brick out of the foundation, eventually it's going to fail. So, everything's got to be done in order, and when they screw up, you just go back to the previous lesson, should be the way to correct it.
Okay.
Even if you have to go back and do it for another 2 weeks or whatever. And you don't need 20-minute or hour training sessions, 5-10 minutes at a time of concentrated work. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish.
Every day, 3 or 4 times a week?
Every day. And just like I said, with the HUP command or this stop command, when you're at home, even when you're not training, you're feeding the dog, you're putting him in and out. So, you go outside to do something, you're taking the dog with them, how long does it take you? A couple seconds to make him sit until you tell him to go out the door. Same thing when you come in. So, but when you're training them, 10 minutes, 15 at the most at a session. And then if you want to do something else, go do something else for a while, then bring them back out in an hour. Because, their attention span, they'll get bored with it too.
Sure.
And a lot of these dogs too, once they have something, you'll know it because they give you a look and like, okay, got it, what's next? Then it's time to move on to the next step. Even if they screw it up, they want something new. You can't try to do the same thing day after day after day after day. The dog's going to get bored. Try to switch it up a little bit.
Hey, let me change topics with you for a sec.
Okay.
Here, Stella's a Cocker Spaniel.
Yeah, this is
Cocker. We talked a little bit before.
Burr.
We saw Rock, the Springer Spaniel. Mm-hmm. A little bit shorter. How much?
Well, she's actually a little bit on the small side, for one. But the breedings, like I was saying before about the breeding, this little female, my one client, Harry Blaine, who lives in Virginia, bought her out of the UK this past spring. My one friend over there, Alan Gwynn, that owns Windmill Wood Kennels, I've known him for years, said he had a very good young trial prospect, and her breeding's impeccable. Her father's won the English Nationals twice. Her mother's English field champion. And if you look at her 4th-generation pedigree, the only dogs that are not field champions is there's 3 dogs in the 4th generation.
Okay.
But, and then once you start getting back there, you're looking at 164th anyway of the gene pool. So
what would be the kind of things I would look at of a Cocker or a Springer? The habitat I'm going to be in?
A lot of it has to do with that, but then, Cockers come in different sizes too. Like I said, she's really on the extremely small side. She weighs, 22, 23 pounds if she's wet and carrying a brick.
And the advantage of a smaller dog is they're going to be able to get in that tighter cover.
A lot of times, they're not going to bolt through this kind of stuff like the Springers do, but they're going to weasel through it.
Okay.
They are unbelievably tough animals, but then, so are the Springers, I mean, if I was going to do a bunch of waterfowling, I would probably have a nice big Springer male, you know, just so you have that little extra horsepower. A couple times a year you need it. But then saying that, the first cocker I ever had, his name was Stu. I brought him over when I came back from working in England, and he was one of the top duck dogs I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, if you sent him for a duck, if he had to go to town and buy one, he'd come back with a duck. I mean, that's just the way he was. But just to show you a little bit of the size difference, now that you asked that, hey, man, go let Ammo out. Now, you know, she weighs 22, 23 pounds, and Matt's going to go get a young dog called Ammo. He's only 15 months old, and he weighs about 30, and that's about what he's going to finish at, is about 30 pounds. But you can still see, you'll see the difference in the size, but you'll still see how much animation and tail action and all that, you know, movement that they have. That animation is a big thing, that style. That's the one thing that, if you notice this dog here, if she's, you know, the way she's out there hunting, if she had one of those little 2-inch bobtails, she wouldn't have near as much style.
Okay.
She has that. Oh, I guess Emma's coming too. Well, we got Ammo and Emma. Now, Emma's a Springer. She's just a young Springer too. And Ammo's the little black cocker.
No, I see Ammo versus Stella.
Yeah.
I can see the size difference. My two Springers over the years, Harley and Jack. Jack was a little bit bigger. He was about 50 pounds. Harley was 45. And Harley was agile and over and under and checking around everything. And Jack was like a bulldozer, kind of, you know, like you said, could plow straight through the thicker stuff. There were times when it would have been handy if he was a little smaller and could have, you know, got into smaller spaces.
Right. See, normally with these guys' ages too, normally we don't do group sessions, you know, yet with them. But if you want, we can, talking about the cover thing, if you want, we can walk over here and put them into some of that cover. And maybe you can see some difference.
I would like to do that.
If you want. Okay. Let's see. Okay, now this is, I don't want to do too much hand movement or too much voice with 3 of these young dogs out, but this is, you know, no shock collars were used, and as you might notice, none of these dogs have a collar on them. You're not allowed to use collars in AKC field trials, any type of collar on a dog, so I just don't train with any kind of a collar. You know, a gun dog's got to run free. You know, I always figured, you know, if they're dumb enough to run away, they're too stupid to keep anyway. But they'll go in a second if I tell them to. Okay, guys. But with all that horsepower, you see, we just started working on a little bit of group patience with them, where they'll sit there in a group like that. They were a little bit more spread out than normally I like them. I like them a little bit tighter, but with them just running like this.
Now this time of year, of course, the everything's got its leaves on, the rush is real high and so on. As we get closer to the fall, you know, they'll be able to move around more. If the dog is, when we get into hunting season, you know, the dog's going to figure out that the bird's not going to be out here in this, you know, this nice mowed area. It's going to be in there. So even these guys at their, you know, in their training stage, I think they figured that out too. Is that why they busted into that?
Oh yeah, that's where the ability comes in. I mean, you know, it's just there. You know, they know where. You got to figure, you know, if they were wild, they'd have to hunt for food. So, you know, they're not going down to McDonald's, you know. Of course, they don't mind if you stop on the way home.
How am I going to get to the point now where, okay, I'm going to cover, you know, this 150 yards and this strip is, what, 30 yards wide, and I want to cover the whole thing. How am I going to get the dog to move kind of, you know, in a pattern back and forth through there? Does it have to be in a pattern? You know, how do you go about it?
I would, if it was 30 yards wide, I'd go to one end and work the 30 yards.
Now, I feel the wind coming from, you know, from the west here, coming from our back.
That's right at my back, yeah.
We're going to want to come into the wind?
If you can, yeah. That's because that's the optimal position for scenting with the dog.
Its scent's going to come to the dog.
You know, that, you know, going into the wind, that's the only time that quartering is the proper pattern, going left to right. You know, like if we were going the other way with the wind at our back, then the dog would have to loop out, you know, 30 yards, wherever you're comfortable with them, make a turn, and then work back towards you, because they have to scent the bird coming into the wind.
Okay.
And then if you have a crossing wind, the dog most of the time will go out on the downwind side and work back on a zigzag into the wind like this.
Am I teaching them that? Are they going to figure that out on their own?
There are ways to enhance the patterning depending on what the wind's doing. But normally they're going to want to have their nose in the wind. That's where the turning them comes in important, because you cast, let's say the wind's going left to right, you cast them right, they're going to go out and they're going to blow out wanting to come back into the wind. And you just have to go like, tell them when to turn so they know when to come back towards you. And usually it doesn't take much with a little bit older dog. And once you tell them where to turn, they kind of know where you want them. Okay. And they'll stay in that proximity just because that's what they do. But and see, like right now, Emma's in there because I told them okay to go, that they could go off and hunt and play and everything. She's in there somewhere, and I'm not worried about her running off. She'll be back in a second. Em, I think she's back in the wood. Here she comes. Now Emma, that little Springer there, she belongs to Larry Gilchrist, lives in Erie. Okay. Oh, PA boy. Okay. And we're actually gonna, she's already got a junior hunter title. She's not quite 2, and we're gonna field trial her this fall. She's gonna be in trials, as Ammo and Burr will be running trials too. They're not gonna be totally tweaked to where I really, really like a trial dog, but you can get the basics down, but you can't train age and experience.
What are the kind of things that that are going to help you move along in those trials? Help you
age and experience.
Okay. Yeah, really. Some of the skills.
But they're steady to wing and shot. They're doing some small blind retrieves. Okay. That kind. They're turning on the whistle. They're stopping when I tell them to stop, and they have to have the natural ability. And then at that point, it's just trained abilities. And in a field trial, unlike a hunt test, you're going dog against dog. Where in a hunt test, you're running against a standard.
Comparing to a standard, to a known standard.
Yeah, okay. to the standard to get whatever you are, junior, senior, master, hunter, whatever grade you're going for. But when it's dog against dog, boy, I tell you, sometimes when you're judging, you're really nitpicking, because you go to a field trial, the cream of the crops there. I mean, last year in Buffalo, there were 22 dogs, and there were 17 field champions, 1 national champion, and the 2010 High Point dog. So, I mean, you show up with a bunch of young dogs, you've got a rough road going for 4 placements against all that talent. But let's get these guys back and get them some water, because we're getting a little bit warm out here, and then we'll get out a couple other dogs and do something else with them.
Great.
That sound good?
Great.
Come on, guys, kennel.
Okay, Jim, we're going to talk about retrieving.
Okay, and Matt's back out here with Rock again, 9 months old. You can see Matt's got a tennis ball. We use a lot of tennis balls, so they got that little bit of fur on them. And now that Matt has something in his hands, you can see a little bit of intensity even in a 9-month-old dog. Matt's going to work him, and when Matt throws that, though, Rock's going to go without stopping and pick that up and bring it back to him. But then I'll come out with Stella here, and she's only about 18, 19 months old, and show you what a steady young dog will do on something thrown. So go ahead, Matt, whenever you're ready, buddy.
I see Matt's giving hand signals to work.
Yeah, just trying to get him to pattern a little bit.
Okay.
How boy, come on. Oh.
Now, when we send dogs on retrieves, we use their name. That way, because like in a field trial, you're running braces. So if everybody sends their dog on fetch, then everybody's dogs are going to go. They shouldn't go on someone else's voice. But the other thing we do is we do drills with 2 or 3 dogs sitting out at a time, actually more advanced than these guys are. And you can throw something and send the dog that you want for that retrieve. But that goes back to the discipline and getting into their head a little bit. And then Matt, dead. Now when he's saying that, that's the command for the dog to hunt the area. And Rock overran that a little bit with enthusiasm. But anytime you get in a situation, use it for some kind of training. And go ahead and put him back on the lead, Matt, and I'll do Stella.